I'm Marc Silber. I'm an author, educator, and photographer here in Carmel, California. And we're going to be joining our good friend Dan Milnor again. Dan is a reformed photojournalist who is also an evangelist for Blurb, an amazing photographer, wonderful storyteller. And he's going to talk to us today about his use of journaling. Dan, thanks for joining us on AYP. I'm a big fan of journaling notebooks. I have a million of them around the house. Some of them I'll never even look at, but they definitely serve a purpose. But tell us, you are a big journal guy, a big notebook guy like me. Can you tell us your method and how you go about using it and the purpose it serves?
Yeah, so I started writing in notebooks when I was in elementary school, and I would write both fictional short stories and then I would write down all the overheard dialogue that I heard from the adults around me.
Hmm.
For some reason, I don't know why I did that, but it was fun and hilarious. And I would make these little handmade books and then put them on my coffee table in the family's house and just see what would happen when the adults would find them. And I was like, okay, this is really cool. I want to keep doing this. So it wasn't until 1993 that I found a book on Peter Beard in the Phoenix Public Library. And I was like, who the hell is Peter Beard? And then I saw his journals and I was like, oh my God, this is so much more than just pen on paper. This is a work of art. And I'm not necessarily wanting to repeat what Peter Beard is doing, but I really need to take the notebook seriously because even by the early 90s, I knew that books and putting my work into print was going to be the absolute pinnacle, like sort of full circle completion of my work was to put everything into print. So I've been keeping books like
Yeah.
this since I'm always getting this backwards
You
since
got it.
about 53. This is the book I had it with me in Albania over this past couple of weeks, and I use Fuji Instax, which are the small printers, and I carry a Fuji Instax printer with me, and I'm constantly basically making prints and then using this as sort of a gateway drug towards the blurb publication I'll make when I'm back. And
Right.
in this case, every year I make a journal when I come back from the work, and I will do that. And then as I'm moving through the country again this year, I was shooting a lot of multiple exposures. This is a portrait of a guy named Aaron who was helpful enough to take us around Tirana, the capital city, one day. And then I use different colored pens as I'm taking notes, and I have 5 different colors of pen that help me basically keep track of what it is I'm putting in here. And the Instax has been just a wonderful little
That is really cool.
to making these books. And I don't know how many of these in my van at all times. I probably have a stack of 20 or 30 of these blank notebooks. I've been gone since the end of May, and I've already filled 3 of those books, and I don't return home for another few months. And so I'll probably go through another 4 or 5 of these books. Photographers are not known as good writers. In fact, photographers have a terrible reputation for being terrible writers. And I think that's unfair because I do think a lot of photographers can write, but they're either lazy and they don't want to do it, or they've been programmed into thinking they can't write. And I just don't believe that. I think everybody can write. And the journal, this is the singular key to doing this.
Yeah.
My journal is not for you.
Right.
And your journal is not for me. It's only for you. So if you're journaling with an audience in mind, you're not journaling, you're marketing.
Yeah.
And so stop marketing. Enough already. You're going to do something, and the journal is a free zone. It's a zone where anything goes and nobody else is going to see it except you. And the freedom to do that, there's not many places left in our lives where we can be who we really are without fear of like retribution or embarrassment or whatever it is. And so the journal does not have to be beautiful. It doesn't have to be perfect. My handwriting is horrendous. I can't read it half the time. It doesn't matter, because the ideas that get planted on those pages turn into the best ideas in my life. And I think if you're a journaler and you do it every day for 2 weeks, you'll never stop.
Here, here. I mean, that's the thing. It is your chance to pour out on a piece of paper what would later become a book even. And I've done that with my own books.
Sure.
And I look back and I go, wow, it's interesting. I had in 4 or 5 pages kind of this whole idea, but I had to keep working it over and refining it. But that's a really good point. No one else is going to look at this. Do not have stage fright. Don't don't censor yourself, and just let your ideas come out and
Yeah,
breathe.
I see a lot of journals that are presented to look in a certain way so that it looks cool and makes the author look really organized and artistic and stylish. And that's great for marketing purposes, and that's great
Yeah.
for building an audience, but those aren't real journals. They're just marketing tools. And I think there's a time and a place for that. But the real benefit of this is honesty. And it's where you're writing in there. And I'll give you an example. It's not exactly a journal, but a photo book that blew my mind when I first started out was Telex Iran by Gilles Perez. And the copy in that book were telexes between Gilles Perez, who was covering the Iranian Revolution, and the Magnum office in Paris. And those telexes were what blew me away about the book was not only the composition, the complexity of his imagery, but was the honesty and the vulnerability that he was putting on display with his telexes to the Magnum office. And I was like, oh, he's not a superhero. He's having doubts like all of us do. Oh, he's a human being. Made me love Gilles Perez even more.
Amazing.
And that's what these books are for.
So if this doesn't violate anything, would you mind taking a page with an image on it and maybe read us what you said? I mean, anything you're happy to go out to the rest of the world?
Oh, I got a great quote from, so I use it to write down quotes all the time.
Yeah.
And I was talking to somebody in Toronto, and they were talking about all the new construction going on. And, new construction around the world is one of the major ways of laundering money all over the world. And someone asked this Albanian guy, so is this Russian money? And he said, there's no Russians here. We have our own oligarchs. And I was like, that's such a great quote.
Can we see that? Let me see I just like to see how you write down your quotes and stuff.
Oh, it's just in the middle of the page.
Okay.
It's just right here.
All right, but you kind of put some brackets on it so you can see.
All from our time with that guy.
Yeah. I'd love to see one also with the image, your Instax, and then whatever you wrote in regard to that.
The Instax are often just placed in. They're images that I think are successful from the trip that I want to live with a little bit. I want to look at them for a while, and I want to live with them. And some of them make it and some of them don't. This is an image that was of the Hungarian president visiting. This is a security guards. His was in here. He just sort of popped up one day, and I thought this image would make it into the final cut because you have the Hungarian minister's car in the middle of the frame, and overlaid in another exposure is the communist mural that was just unveiled in the main plaza in Tirana. And I thought that's a pretty interesting thing based on what's happening in Hungary right now. But the image doesn't quite work. There's also the minaret from the mosque, which is the oldest mosque in the country that's in the middle of this. Doesn't work. It didn't quite work in the long run. And the colored pens.
Yeah. Tell me about this.
The way that I use the colored pens varies. This is kind of, these are notes from a book called The Genius of Birds that I just finished this morning, actually.
Okay.
Each one of these, so it's primarily written in black ink, but then each of the key points, I've gone back and I've highlighted them in a specific color. So in this case, blue.
Okay.
What I will do is differentiate from the days that I'm reading. I will change up that color so that I'll know that on Monday I was using blue, on Tuesday it was green, on Wednesday it was red. Helps me differentiate what I covered on specific days, but then also my brain will remember color patterns to take me back to a specific note. So I have a weird brain in the sense that I can look at a page like this and then I can recall the entire page, and I can recall all the pages in the journal and where things are on every page so that I can pull back that data when I need to pull back that data. And it's based on that color and the design and the pattern of the page. I started doing this in college with textbooks, where if I took a history test and they asked me a question about whatever, Prussia,
Yeah.
I remembered the design of the book page that the Prussian information was on. And then I could see the columns. And then through the columns and the layouts of the pages, I could see the exact wording of the pages. So I could reference the textbook in my head. And so I think that's why
That's pretty cool. Well, you're a visual guy, obviously. That
cheating. And then I take a white gel pen, which is the greatest discovery in the history of the world. I love these white gel pens, and I write over the darker places in the photographs. And then I'll add stuff like this is an actual vintage stamp from the communist era.
This is cool. I love it. It's just, it makes it so much more interesting. I don't do this. I need to start doing it. I just write, and I write with one color ink. You've kind of expanded my whole viewpoint on how I should be using my notebook.
It's really fun. The other thing that I do, which I don't have with me, it's in the van. I have the journal from last year's Albania trip. And so what I'll do when I come back from the trip is I will design an 8x10 soft cover blurb notebook.
Yeah.
What I love about the blurb notebooks is, one, you put in all of this Albania work will get put into the journal. It'll get printed in from blurb. And then the pages in between, I can do grid, I can do spot, I can do lined, I can do blank, and I can mix and match it. So I'll do 20 pages of grid, 20 pages of line, 20 pages of blank. And then all of the images that get printed in, I will go back over those images with these colored pens. And what it does, when you break down an image, the composition of an image by outlining the edges of all the objects in a still frame, it teaches you how your eye sees the world. It shows you the patterns of what you were actually seeing when you made those photographs. And it also looks really cool. So I was doing talks across the country a few weeks ago, stopped in St. Louis and Cleveland and Toledo and did all these different talks. And I brought like 6 sample books. And for some reason, I brought that last year's Albania journal that had been completely worked over with the pens and the gel pens and Polaroids and everything else. And pretty much every single high-level person that attended those talks came up to me at some point with that book in their hand and said, this is what I want to do. That this is the coolest thing I've seen in a long time. It wasn't the straight photo books. It was that journal, that weird, modified journal that I had been working on that they responded to. It's a weird thing. It's a blast. I mean, just buying a set of colored pens and changing the color from day to day to day. One, it helps you differentiate each day. When you just quickly flip through the journal, you can see where your day breaks are.
Yeah.
But I think what you'll find is that just changing the colors will change the entire experience. You might write differently in different colors. You might suddenly start thinking about your page design a little more when you're using different colors or accentuating or doing drawings in the book. It's really fun. It's like being a kid again.
I love it. It is like being a kid, and we need more of that in our life, don't we? The older we get, the more we have to recapture that, because that's what creativity. As kids, we just did this stuff. We didn't think about it. It was just different crayons and whatever,
Yeah.
And as adults, we need to do that.
The journaling community is vast and filled with really talented people. I mean, my journals to me are very crude. The primary exercise in that journal is the writing.
Yeah.
It's the overheard dialogue, because as I'm making and turning everything I do into books, I need narrative, I need copy, I need real story to go along with it. So I don't do captions. I write stories. And so you can't remember. You think you're going to be able to remember this stuff, and you can't. It's a physiological impossibility. So if you don't write it down, it's gone.
It's true. It flies away.
And if you're a street photographer or you're a documentary photographer, editorial photographer, really anyone, this is an invaluable thing to have.
Thanks again. And that's really valuable advice. You guys, if you're not journaling after this, you should be. And I'm going to start adding the colors and Instax too. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, Instax is a great device. I'm so happy that I got a printer, and I just have an Instax printer. So I'm shooting everything with my Fuji system in the field, and then I transfer it to my phone and I print it through an Instax printer. So I don't use the Instax cameras. I just use the printer.
The printer. Awesome. I love it. Dan, thanks again. Have a wonderful summer. We will be catching up with you soon again.
Awesome. Thanks, Marc.
Okay, guys, that's some really good advice. I want to see you use your journals. Use those 5 colors. Get your Instax printer. I've got some work to do because I haven't been doing those things. Put those tools to use. Get those thoughts out of your head and onto paper, as we've been talking about for a long time. One thing I want to invite you to do is get my free download of my composition field guide. You can take this and put it in your phone and carry it around with you as you're photographing as reminders. It's got 15 different compositional tools that you should put to use. You can find that right up here and in the description. So grab that and put it to use. Thanks for joining us. And please leave your comments down here, your feedback, anything for Dan or questions. Also, I'd love it if you would subscribe and enable the bell so you don't miss any of our new episodes. And please share this video. And until next time, remember to get out and capture your own images of life.